I think I hear Gary coming. You hear the roar of that V8 from here.
Hey, how are you?
Welcome, sir. This is DJ coming at you today with a new video. Today we are going to be interviewing my friend Gary here. I teased about this in one of my earlier videos when we were doing the Pontiac Grand Prix videos, and I figured this would be kind of a nice round out to that video. So we'll turn this over to Gary here. And first of all, what year is your car?
Hi, everybody, and thanks for having me, Derek. It's fun to be here with you at the marina down here in Niagara. So my car is a 2009.1 Pontiac G8 GT, 1SD package that I have, as you can see, retrofitted into something else.
Yes. So obviously this one looks a little bit different than a lot of G8s that most of the people here would be used to seeing. So can you tell me a little bit about your conversion that you've done and what made you want to do this?
So the car, I mean, it's an interesting car in the sense that it has a story. So for your viewers that may not have seen your other video on these things, this car was made in Australia, and when you're in Canada or the States, that seems really foreign. Like, what do you mean it's come from the other side of the world and it's here and it exists and it was sold as a Pontiac? Like what? Or in later times as a Chevrolet. So really from day one, I've had the car 10 years, and I had this vision because I knew what I bought. I was one of those people that understood that it was really a VE Commodore from Holden in Australia, that I had this vision of turning it back, or retrofitting it, if you will. Some people call it up-badging. Into kind of returning it back to what would have been in Australia. So this car in Australia would have been an SSV Commodore, as it was configured from GM as a G8 GT. I have since kind of taken it to another level and added HSV components. So for those that don't know, HSV is kind of like, the best analogy is probably AMG to Mercedes, or Shelby to Mustang.
Makes sense.
So it's kind of a factory-backed operation, but independent of General Motors in Australia. And so they were souping up a full range of cars there until 2017. When the factory closed. So the wing on the back and the front bumper cover, the fenders, the gauge package inside, many things have been altered or added. Having friends in Australia, having Australian friends in the US that have really stepped up and helped me to source many of the components that are on the car. And I'm not the only one that's done this. It's unique here, but there are many people in the US and some in Canada that have done a similar kind of thing.
Yeah, you're not used to seeing a lot of Australian cars in Canada or the US, really. And it's, we're much more used to seeing the European ones and the Asian ones from the Asian market, but not so much the Australian.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there rarely goes a day that I have the car out that people aren't asking me, what the heck is that?
Yeah,
They don't really understand the badging on the car. Some do. I think it's really special, though, being here in southern Ontario. We're in the wine region.
Yep.
And there's a lot of Australians in the wine industry that come here for our summer, which is their winter.
Yep. Makes sense.
And, you know, when you cross paths with an Aussie and you have this car out, they freak out.
Oh, I could imagine.
I had a gentleman last summer at a car show freaking out. I have another gentleman that I've seen a couple of times now. He freaks out. And for those that kind of know what the car is, they're almost disappointed if you don't have an Australian accent as you're talking to them. What do you mean you're not Australian? You drive an Australian car, but it's kind of fun. It's one of the reasons why I love my car so much is it's unique.
Yes.
No disrespect to Mustang owners or Corvette guys.
Right, yeah.
No New Balances here, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Or, you know, Camaro guys. Like, I could go all day long for a week straight and not see another G8.
Yeah.
Let alone one that Holden converted. And I can think of, in Canada, maybe 3 or 4 that are at kind of this level of spec.
Yeah, I've seen very few of them myself, and I've been to a lot of car shows.
Yeah, and you know what? It's fun. Car shows are really fun. The car gets a lot of inquisitive looks. Some people, you know, seek me out. I mean, usually it's fairly obvious to figure out that it's me. I'll wear a shirt like this or whatever.
Yeah.
And ask questions, and it's either usually the really young guys that play video games that maybe like Forza Horizon, I think, has Holdens in it. So they understand right away. They see the logo on the car and they understand.
Never seen it, though, in person.
They've never seen one in person. They freak out. And I try to explain to them, I never misrepresent the car. It started out life as a G8. Yep. You know, yes, it's left-hand drive. It's not right-hand drive.
Yeah.
But I think it's sometimes in their mind, they just don't want to believe me. They want to believe it's really a Holden, right? Yeah. And it is really a Holden. That's the whole thing. Like, there's this raging debate in the community. It's not real. It's not this. It's not that. Well, the reality is it was designed, developed, and built by Australians in Australia and exported, you know, to the U.S. and Canada as a Pontiac. Other parts of the world, it was a Chevrolet Lumina. Okay. And then it was also a Vauxhall VXR8 in mostly Great Britain. Okay. So GM has this whole thing with badge engineering that I think is pretty well the only company that does it.
Yeah, to my knowledge.
I mean, a BMW is a BMW is a BMW, right? But this car was different, and so it's a bit controversial. Some people that are Pontiac purists, I know like one guy wouldn't talk to me for a while just because I changed the badges on my car. This thing is identified as a Holden since day 3 of ownership, 10 years ago. Yeah. So I've owned Pontiacs, and I'm a Pontiac person. I love Firebirds. I would love to have another Trans Am. I love Grand Prix. I've had some really nice Pontiacs. Yep. But to me, this isn't a Pontiac. It was a badge-engineered Pontiac, but it's not really a Pontiac. It's a Holden Commodore.
It's basically a Holden reconfigured for a different market. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, we say badge-engineered Holden. I mean, it came down the same assembly line. They did alter. They added the kidney grills to the front fascia. Okay. But predominantly the rest of the car, I mean, the interior would be a mirror image because they're right-hand drive there. Right. But everything is the same. The only difference was that even at our highest trim level, the G8 GXP, there were a lot of things that were held back from our North American production cars that they had in Australia.
That sounds typical.
Yeah, and
it happens even in the States now with a lot of cars too. They hold back stuff too. So.
And you know, I think for a lot of purists, pure enthusiasts, I think is the right word. It was a bit frustrating because we were well aware of HSV. Yeah. We were well aware that in Australia you could get the Maloo, which is the Holden Ute, which is like an El Camino style version of this car.
I remember seeing that. Yep.
And we have friends now in the U.S. that have them, that have brought them in. I think there are a handful in Canada not too many though. And there's even a shooting brake or station wagon version of this car.
Oh yes, yes.
And again, they're now made. Some of them made their way over into the U.S. And I don't think there's any in Canada that I'm aware of. But
I've never seen one.
The point is that they were coming down the assembly line. They were sold in the Australian market. They may have even been sold elsewhere in the world. There are some Maloos in Britain, but they never made their way here. And ironically, in 2010, before the, I digress. More like 2009.
Yeah.
GM debuted at, I think it was the Chicago or maybe the New York Auto Show. The Maloo, or well, they were calling it the G8 ST, G8 sport truck.
Yep.
So GM was actually planning on bringing the El Camino style of this car to market in the States, maybe Canada. We don't know for sure.
No.
But it never happened because the global economic crisis hit, and you know the rest of the story. Obama told them, if we're going to bail you out, you have to kill, some of your brands. So Pontiac, Hummer, Saab.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
Oldsmobile had already been gone by that point.
Right. So in this car, I mean, unfortunately, it's a great car. It's a driver's car. It's more akin to a BMW M5 of the era, like the early 2000s, because here's an interesting story. GM Holden actually poached a lot of the development engineers from BMW,
did they really?
Brought them to Australia and did all the development work there.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
I mean, I don't have all the facts, but this is kind of the lore in our community. The legend is that happened, and I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it really is a driver's car, but it wasn't supported with great marketing, unfortunately. They did locally here where we are.
Yeah.
I recall when these cars were new and they were sitting on car lots and they weren't moving.
No.
Because nobody knew what they were.
Nobody knew what they were. Nobody knew what they're capable of either.
And, arguably I did, but at the time I couldn't afford one new.
No.
And, I mean, it was frustrating, but it is what it is.
And sometimes that's probably a problem that GM had at the time, too. Having too many brands, they had to spread the marketing dollars too thinly across the whole spectrum of vehicles they had, and this one got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure, 100%.
And like you say, we're talking about how, BMW is a BMW is a BMW no matter where you go, but GM had various brands that kind of goes back to history of the company basically, and it was just basically an amalgamation of a whole bunch of different car companies that kind of came together.
Yeah, I think in context at the time, if you were going to bring this car to North America, I think the Pontiac brand was the right brand for it.
Absolutely.
Pontiac, we build excitement and built for drivers and all those mantras that they used to use in marketing really did suit this car. I mean, I would have loved to see it just come here as a Holden. I'm a Leo, so I really dig the Holden line. That's my thing. But, it's a shame. And I mean, ultimately, even Holden, unfortunately, ceased to exist as a brand. I think it was 2020 was the last year.
I think it was.
They closed the factory in 2017. The Aussies were not happy. Don't blame them.
No.
About losing their car.
Yep.
Their brand. And, they really wanted it to be an Australian car, but unfortunately, from what I understand, the government there ceased to subsidize the car industry.
Oh, yeah, that would do it.
So, unfortunately, they wound down production and then started to bring in, ironically, badge-engineered Opel Insignias, I believe it was, as the new Commodore, the VB Commodore. And it didn't do well. And at that point, I think they just, as I understand it, they decided to fold up operations altogether. And, that resulted in a lot of turmoil in their dealer network.
Okay, so I kind of wanted to touch on the community aspect here of this car, and even just in car culture in general, because I think this is something that a lot of people outside of the car community really don't get a full grasp on. So I'll hand the mic over to you.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I guess I would equate it like whatever you're into, I'm in RC cars. So, I mean, maybe you're in an RC car club, or you're in a knitting group, or maybe you're in a Harley Davidson's, and you have a brotherhood with your fellow, motorbike people, right? And you look out for one another. Like, our community is a lot like that. I mean, we really do truly look out for one another. So we have here in Ontario, we have a provincial club, an Ontario club. So we get together in June, early June, near Toronto, and then we do another one in the fall. I forgot to mention earlier off camera to you that we're doing one. We're actually doing one in September here in Niagara. I haven't done one since 2017, so we're gonna do one. We've got we're permit in the works for a park near the lake. You'll know it well. I'll tell you off camera more about that. But yeah, so I mean, our community is really amazing. I mean, there are so many good people. This particular car, I mean, you may be the only one in your town, but there are a number of them across the U.S. and Canada, and we went to an event in Indianapolis last year called Outback in the Midwest. It's put on by a gentleman by the name of Travis. If you ever watch VinWiki, he's that guy with the accent, bald guy, kind of funny, that's on there a couple times a year, usually, Ed Bolian's channel. And so he has been fortunate enough in life to do well for himself, and he has a number of acres in South Indianapolis. So he puts on an event at his house, and it started out with like 12 cars, something like that, a few years ago. Well, last year we had 430 cars on his lawn.
Wow.
Yes. And he's totally 100% legit. He gets the permits. He even hires like off-duty police to do all of the traffic control and all that good stuff. He gets portable washrooms for the venue, and they're air-conditioned washrooms. Wow. Like, I mean, to your viewers, if you're in the area and you enjoy these cars, to see 430 of them together, mind blown. Like, we were there 5 minutes last year. It was our first time there, and within 5 minutes, we're like, we're coming back. So we drove the 9 hours from Ontario last year, and we're going again this year. And we're bringing friends, so we're going to have a blast. And that's Labor Day weekend. Okay. There's also an event in the Northeast. Yeah, check it out. There's an event, and if you go on YouTube and put in Outback in the Midwest, it should come up. He gives away a car. He raises money for charity. I mean, just sharing a story and talking about community. There was a young gentleman last year by the name of Sean. Sean, if you're out there watching this, hi. Who unfortunately got into a car accident on the way to the event. And I'm not sure where he lives. He's somewhere, 2-3 hours away from Indianapolis. And unfortunately, got into a car accident. And word got out, like this was on the way the day before to Indianapolis. Word got out that this happened. And at the event, when Travis at the end of the afternoon is giving away awards and door prizes and all this awesome stuff, giving away a car, hello, I mean, you got to pay for a raffle ticket, so it's not free, but no, I mean, a $50 raffle ticket for a pretty substantial Holden is pretty cool. So word got out that this happened to this young gentleman. And the next thing you know, a bucket comes out, and there was this guy named Rabbit. If you've ever watched Tex-Mex Motors, it's on like HBO or something like that. So he's kind of a celebrity, right? And Travis and this guy go back. His nickname is Rabbit. His real name is Rob. Okay. Good guy. I met him in person. Awesome dude. So they bring out a bucket, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna do like a whip around kind of thing for Sean. This is what happened." Well, the next thing you know, dudes are walking up and throwing money in this bucket, and we're not talking $5 bills, like 50s, 100s. And I was one of the first ones there. And listen, I'm not rich, and I'm Canadian, so we have a 40% deficit on our money already, okay, because of the exchange rate. Well, this is the thing, right? So, I'm rich in life. I'm not rich in money. So I donated what I could, and it brought a tear to my eye. Like, I knew there and then that I'm around the right people. Like, I mean, they raised thousands of dollars for this kid to help get his car fixed. And by the way, one of the guys in our community who's in the body trade took it upon himself to totally fix that car. Well, not fix that car, because that car got written off. Fix a replacement car and make it better than the car he had. I mean, another Holden. So Sean's going to be back this year, bigger and better than ever. And, you know, we talked about this earlier about the U.S. I mean, unfortunately, you know, in some parts of the world, the U.S. gets bad-mouthed a little bit, whatever. But when we go to the States, like, I mean, honest to God, people are so friendly and generous. And, you know, it's such an amazing place to go and visit. And in our hearts, Amanda and I, we kind of feel like half American. Like, I just love it to death. And I love the friendships that this car has brought about in the U.S. And I have friends in the U.K. because of the car, obviously Australia. A friend of mine helped me import parts for this recently because the company I was buying from wouldn't ship to North America. And so I asked if he could, Phil, hi, if he could, help me out, and could I mail them to his house and then he could forward them to me. Yeah, mate, no worries, mate. So the next thing you know, they're at his house, and before I could do anything, he's already put them in the post, sending them to Canada, and he wouldn't let me pay the postage. Oh. And it wasn't cheap. And I'm like, dude, he's like, nah, mate, I just want to see your car finished. Your car's awesome, mate. And so, you know, our community is tremendous. We're so blessed to have amazing people like that around.
Well, thank you for sharing some of those stories with us. I mean, those are some pretty awesome stories and some really good example of the kind of community aspect that a lot of people outside of the car community, they just don't understand. And I mean, you wouldn't unless you were in there, and you get to meet so many different people from so many different walks of life. And yeah, I mean, being where we are very close to the U.S. too. And yeah, I've traveled the U.S. many times myself. And I know there's some of the nicest, most hospitable people I've ever met. Yeah, especially in southern U.S. is probably actually some of my favorite. No disrespect to anybody in the north, but I guess I just done more traveling down there, Texas, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, you know, whatnot. And one of the things I absolutely love to do down there is just go into like a diner, like a Waffle House down there, and talk to people.
Right, the locals.
Yeah, that's where you really truly meet the local people, and they obviously know very quickly that I'm a Canadian. They know they got that accent. We don't notice it ourselves, but I mean, I've even had people comment my YouTube channel about my accent and that, which is, it's all well and good. Doesn't bother me. Keep doing it. I don't care. But so that's why I kind of wanted to touch on this. So, as I'm sure a lot of you are waiting for, we're going to do a walk around with Gary with his car. We're going to show you some of the under the hood and whatnot. And we'll let you hear this beast as well, because it sounds pretty darn impressive too. So,
a little potent.
A little bit. Okay, now we're here with the part of the video that you've probably all been waiting for. We're going to do a walk around with the car. Gary's going to talk about the conversion and some of the things he's done to the car and any other interesting facts that, the viewers, you guys might find interesting as well.
So the rundown on the car, I guess the obvious thing would be the wing. This is actually one of the first things that I got for the car back in the day, so probably about 9 years ago now. This came from Perth, Australia. This is an HSV, so Holden Special Vehicles E-Series 1 wing. They went to a Series 2 later. This came from a gentleman by the name of Crazy Paul, who was a big supplier for a lot of us in the earlier days of doing the retrofit scene, is what I call it, or up badging. So this came to the car. The mounting points were already there, kind of concealed. There's two dimples in the underside of the bonnet where it bolts up. So that's the proper wing for this car. So you can see where they are there. So it was drilling out the dimples, of course painting where you expose the metal, and then bolting her down. So as simple as that. There's gaskets on there too to keep the rain out. Spacious trunk. It's kind of the selling point of the car, right? I mean, look at how huge the trunk is. Two amplifiers Yeah, I mean, cargo net. And then, of course, all of my little add-ons here. So Sandman was a model in Australia of a Holden Ute. They called it the Shaggin' Wagon. Not going into why they called it that. Okay, and then of course I went to Indianapolis last year. JC Customs, new edition. So after I debuted the car this year with the new front end, I had a gentleman by the name of Jace Collins who sent me some free merch. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. Midwest Holden Cookout, and then of course our Ontario G8 Owners Club. And then I don't know if you can see it there. I just want one. So that was the mantra or the marketing jargon for HSV. So every HSV came from the factory with that sticker. I just want one. And then on the back, so it's a 6-liter displacement engine. It's a Holden Commodore. FAF is a dealer group in the Toronto area that sells like Porsches and BMWs and stuff. So I put that on to mess with people, to make them think it's more exotic than it really is. Okay. Walkinshaw, which is this logo here, Walkinshaw. So Walkinshaw is the family that owns HSV. Tom Walkinshaw was the founder. He passed away in 2013. His son Ryan runs the company now. They're big in racing, right? So they have a race-bred heritage. V8 Supercars is huge in Australia. So that's what this is here. So this is a replica of an R8 Club Sport. This wing comes from an R8 Club Sport. The GTS also shared this wing, but this car has been set up to be a replica of an HSV Club Sport R8, and hence why it has the R8 badging. I know everyone identifies that with Audi, but Holden also, HSV also did that. Taillights, I tinted those myself. It's got an aftermarket exhaust, so it has Solo, well, it's a catback. Solo J pipes are called. Solo Performance out of Buffalo, New York. Okay. And then has a custom X pipe set up. We're running high flow cats. And the rims are Sentali Street SS1s. Those are actually Canadian. They're 20-inch. They're flow formed. They're lightweight. I was running Camaro SS wheels for a long time. The brakes on the back are factory, so those are PBR. They're Australian. Same spec as a G8 GT. Even a V6 G8 would have those. Those are a 285 section tire on the back, 30/20. They're a Michelin Pilot Super Sports. So Jace Collins, JC Customs, provided these from Perth, Australia earlier this year, free of charge. And again, that is the Holden line with the race car driver, which harkens back to the race heritage of the VE Commodore. So they race these V8 supercars in Australia. And for your viewers, if you've never watched a V8 supercar race or even part of one, look up Bathurst 1000. It is the most epic race up a mountain, not up a mountain, but up a big hill and down a big hill that you'll ever see. It is epic. Inside, so it's fairly stockish inside. So those are the original leather seats. This is a 2009. So I think one of the strongest points of this car is how well preserved the interior is. This car has spent most of its life out of the sun. So stock 1SD GT interior. The only major differences are the Holden Super Sport steering wheel, the Holden airbag cover, the HSV center stack. So those are VDO gauges. So you've got your battery, your oil temp, and oil pressure. The waterfall around the radio and then down into the console is all completely different from what it would have been as a G8. And then the leather armrest would be different than a G8. So all G8's got a vinyl armrest. This one has a leather one from Holden. The gauge faces and the instrument cluster are Holden spec. Interesting note, the calibration for the speedo. Now this has a digital speedo too, so it's always accurate, but the calibration on the analog speedo is calibrated differently here than in Australia. So I don't know if you noticed the red blip there on the speedo. That's true 100 kilometers an hour, so it's off. So yeah, that's a flaw. So what happens when you mod cars? Right. HSV door sill plates. And like, I've really tried my very, very best. I'll show you here. To try and do everything. So those are the original mats. And HSVs came with this badge on the floor mat. So I went to great lengths to get those.
Wow.
So it's one of those cars where it has like this OEM plus signature. We were talking about this off camera. Like, if you didn't know any better, you'd think, oh, this is the way the car came. But it didn't. So then, of course, the obvious is the HSV fenders. So G8's never got this heat extractor style treatment like an old school Trans Am, but HSV's did. On the front, you've got 14-inch rotors, and you have 4 piston Brembos. Those are from a Gen 1 Cadillac CTS-V. So what I was talking about earlier from Mr. Body Kits, or Body Kits Kingdom, I think it's Body Kits Kingdom in Australia, carbon fiber. These bits are courtesy of Phil because they wouldn't ship them to me here in Canada. So they went to a domestic address in Australia, and then they came here. This is an HSV E-Series 2/3 front fascia. Those are aftermarket headlights with a DRL treatment and eyebrows. And of course, you'll notice a little Australian badge. Just a little hint, right? I mean, it doesn't say Australia all over it, but, you know, it's understated, but, you know, for those that know, right? So that's the most interesting people to me are the ones that already know this car before I even talk to them about it. So under the hood, you've got the original 6-liter L76. Interesting fun fact, this engine was assembled in Mexico, shipped to Australia, assembled into the car in Australia, and then shipped to Canada. This particular car is, as I mentioned, a 2009.1. So it's a March 2008 build, and the first registered owner of this car was GM Canada. So we think it's one of the very first in Canada. Because it was titled by GM Oshawa, it wasn't delivered to a dealer. It went straight to GM Oshawa. And I have this because I have the original window sticker, and it shows the destination on it. It would have gone into the GM executive pool. And then at that point, once it miled out, they usually go like 8,000, 10,000 kilometers. They mile them out, and then they usually put them into a pool for employees. So I'm the third title owner of the car. So I bought it from a dealer back in 2014-ish. So back to the engine, it's your standard L76. It's been dressed up, of course. It's got Holley coil covers. It has this replica detail plaque by a gentleman by the name of Chris Fretch out of the US, who does amazing work. Car's not perfect. It's got some issues, you know, and like just little finicky things like I got to fix this thing here. But the big thing and what makes this car sound so special is the fact that it has a Brian Tooley Racing BTR Stage 2 LS3 hot cam. So it's making just under 400 horsepower to the wheels. So it has been dyno tuned. So it has LS7 lifters, LS3 valley pan. This is Alex Palmieri from Legit Streetcars. So he was at the event. He's a big YouTuber.
I was going to ask you about that if that was...
Yes. So he was at the Outback event last year, and he was kind enough to sign my car. So that was a big deal for me at the time. I was kind of geeking out, you know, celebrity people. There's a whole bunch of cool and interesting stickers in here. This is an Australian cold air intake from a company called OPG. So it's a conical K&N air filter down below, and then it forces the air through. Aftermarket power flow or aeroflow power steering reservoir. I mean, it's not a huge, big horsepower build, but it's drivable. It's very streetable. It has the lumpy cam, which you'll hear in a little bit. But I can roll down the highway. I can go to Indianapolis with impunity. I could take this car to California tomorrow. I wouldn't worry about it.
Right.
with the air conditioning on, and it's a great Grand Touring car. I mean, the Australians built these cars to move great distances because, just like Canada, their cities are spread apart, and you're in the car for hours on end. So we've kind of covered most of it now, but I guess the only other thing to match these are HSV Vector Black Series hood scoops, made by an Australian company. We already talked about that, Body Kits Kingdom, and they wouldn't ship to Canada, so I had my Aussie mate ship them to me. But it's the matching mirror caps, so these are all carbon fiber. Just a styling thing. It doesn't make the car go any faster, but it is what it is. We were talking about it a little bit earlier. The Aussies designed these cars to go great distances. Australia is a lot like Canada in the sense that the cities are all, far apart, and you're on the highway a lot. So this car is a very comfortable highway cruiser, GT type car, Grand Touring car. One of the fun facts about owning one of these cars is if you drive it for 2 hours continuously without a break, the car knows, and it will chime and put up a little symbol on the dash saying, with a tree and a park bench, saying it's time to rest. So, I mean, it's definitely Australian. I mean, even the fuel door, if you look at the majority of GMs, the fuel door is on the driver's side. Well, this in Australia would be the driver's side. So the fuel door is on the driver's side, but it's not. So it's just one of those quirky things, but it makes it easier when you go to Costco to get gas, because most cars are on the left, this one's on the right. Thanks for having me on town, man. Have a great day, eh?
Glad you enjoyed it, eh?
Eh?
Don't forget to like the video before you leave. Leave a comment below. Subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified of any upcoming videos. Thank you for watching and have a great day.